All right, let's jump right in to the Breonna Keeler interview. This is really good stuff. Really, really good.
Talking about in these documents at Mar-a-Lago, and you've learned that DOJ is investigating possible Espionage Act violations. Are you concerned that Donald Trump was keeping these highly classified documents at his resort?
Well, we have a number of concerns, Brianna. Obviously, one is whether or not the raid itself was justified.
Okay, so first of all, this is called deflection. We have a search warrant. We know the process. We know that Merrick Garland signed off on it. We know Trump's own selection for FBI director, Christopher Wray, signed off on it. And we know that a judge signed off on it. So we don't have any reason right now to believe that there was no legal justification. They should now prove there was no legal justification. But all of the evidence so far is that this was, who was it that said it? Hannity, I's crossed and T's dotted, for lack of a better term.
Have this list from the FBI, but we don't have conclusive as to whether or not this actually is classified material and whether or not it rises.
Second distortion. Some of the things Trump is being investigated for doesn't depend on whether the information was classified. So we're 30 seconds in. Turner's been speaking for 8 seconds. He's already told two very deceptive things.
Rises to the level of the highest classified material. On a bipartisan basis, Congress is saying, show us the goods. We want to know, one, what did the Department of Justice and the FBI tell the judge that they were going to find, and what did they find? There's nothing in those boxes that members of the intelligence community and the committee itself don't have the ability to see. If it rises to the level of an immediate national security threat, which is what it would take to actually raid the president's home, because as you know,
Remember, the term raid is very suggestive and salacious. A search warrant was executed, and I'm guilty of this as well. Execution of a search warrant, there is this shorthand, the word raid. They executed a search warrant, right? Okay.
They had a number of options available to them, including just going to court and asking for the court to enforce the subpoena that they had. Now, clearly, no one is above the law. Donald Trump is not above the law, and Attorney General Garland is not above the law either. And Congress has the powers of oversight. He needs to comply. We've seen material like this before. We've seen materials that have been submitted to courts for warrants. This is not unprecedented. His actions are...
So I know you guys probably don't remember the question. The question was whether Mike Turner's concerned about the materials that Donald Trump had at Mar-a-Lago. So this is a real splat on the wall to see what sticks.
Unprecedented history, and he has a lot of questions to answer.
You're familiar with special access programs and the level of classification that is. Why are you casting doubt on how classified this information was if you see the property receipt and it's very
good question,
very clear that this was SCI information, some of it?
And I'm going to answer it honestly for you guys. The answer is, if you don't like the content, you question process. And if you don't like the process, you question the content. I'm sorry, let me put it a different way. If you don't like the content, you question the process. And if the content is good for you, you focus on the content. That's the way they operate.
Well, but what that receipt shows is that this material was marked as such. It doesn't mean that it currently is. I can get...
Listen, all the documents had top secret classified written all over them. That's not proof that they were.
I'll give you an example for, Zawahiri. We were given briefings and briefing materials concerning the hunt for Zawahiri, all of the issues of trying to find Zawahiri, how they found Zawahiri. Today, that information. It's been broadcast on your own news channel. But yet, if you go down into the skiff of the Intelligence Committee, we'll still have materials that are still marked classified TSI. Similarly, the Russian anti-satellite weapons. We have classified materials that are marked as classified.
Again, the question really is, you're now saying maybe all the stuff wasn't truly classified, but do you have evidence of that? Or you're just trying to distort?
But yet you yourself have broadcast those. These are materials that are 2 years old. We don't know what they are. We don't know if they rise to the level of being a national security threat. But the fact that you have here the Attorney General, who is going after President Biden's political rival, whose own personal career was derailed on the way to the Supreme Court by Donald Trump himself, an unequal application of the law between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
There is no, that is untrue. Now, I don't want to do a legal analysis. That is beyond me. Numerous legal experts have explained why the Hillary Clinton email thing is completely different than this. Hillary Clinton's email server was disclosed. It was investigated. There were not crimes. It was investigated by a Republican-led FBI. It's just not the same thing. There was nothing to go and obtain. Hillary wasn't refusing to turn things over. It's just not the same thing. And Breonna, some people are saying Breonna Keeler's not controlling the interview well. This guy is gish galloping. I do think overall she does a pretty good job.
And the fact that you have the FBI previously submitting in warrant materials that were bogus, that were politically motivated, that targeted Donald Trump, there's a high level of skepticism. But we don't have to speculate. We have the clearance. We have the oversight ability. Attorney General Garland needs to provide these materials. You have bipartisan calls for do that. Put the materials in a room, let us see them, and then we can tell you what our answer is and what our discernment is of whether or not this is a true national security threat or whether or not this is an abuse of discretion.
Now, remember, the House is not a law enforcement body. They can refer to law enforcement actions which they believe could be crimes, but this is all just completely backwards.
By Attorney General Garland.
Do you take home documents marked special access?
No.
And yet you're casting doubt.
And quite frankly, I've been in the Oval Office with the president. I'd be very surprised if he has actual documents that rise to the level of immediate national security threat.
That's not the issue, though. Did you guys see that switcheroo? She asked about whether he takes home documents with a certain classification. That's objective. Does it have a certain classification? Turner goes, I just don't know that those documents were really of national security importance. Well, that's a judgment call. That's not the question that Breonna asked. This was a very bad idea for Turner to do this interview.
Well, the documents, just to be clear, several sets, and you're aware of that because you've seen the property receipt. You're casting doubt. You want information. You don't actually have that information on which to base that conclusion at this point.
Correct.
But you yourself would not take home documents that are marked special access. You would not take home this sensitive, compartmented information.
Well, remember what I'm casting doubt on. I mean, it's not, these are labeled that. We don't know whether or not these are classified and rise to that level, but this...
Listen, it has a radiation warning on it. We don't know that it's really radioactive. We just don't know that. Anything can be labeled radioactive. Oh, interesting.
Second thing we don't know is, are they a national security threat? Attorney General Garland...
Now understand, Breonna Keeler hasn't even brought up national security threat at this point. That's a separate issue.
Could have gone to court to
not?
enforce the subpoena that
Sir,
he had.
do you know they're not?
Asking the court to demand that Donald Trump deliver...
Now here, I actually can't tell whether he can't hear her or he's pretending that he can't hear her.
...the materials to the court and said he spent 9 hours in his home. That rises to the highest level. We give them authority to be intrusive and invasive, and that's to be used sparingly. There are other options that are available to him. The fact that they spent 9 hours in Trump's residence, they're going to have to justify that.
They had concern this could be a national security threat. When you cast doubt on that, do you have evidence that this was not a national?
Right. The people with all the evidence and information worried that it was a national security threat. He has none of it and is casting doubt on it.
Security threat?
It's sort of like when Cassidy Hutchinson testified under oath, and then like through the grapevine, supposedly some Secret Service agent was willing to dispute what she said. But then when they were invited to come in and do it under oath, they didn't.
or that this was known to
Well,
not be a
that's what's
national
great about
security
this.
threat?
We're actually to the point, and I'm sorry, you're breaking up a bit for me, but what we don't
He's struggling to hear her at this critical moment.
have to speculate. We have all the clearance. Congress has all the powers of oversight. All Attorney Garland has to do is comply with the laws, provide this information to us, let us look, show us the goods. Bipartisan basis, people are calling for the Attorney General Garland, show us the goods.
You're breaking up like it's some kind of phone connection.
We need to determine, is this a national security threat? And as we also determine that is, was there abuse of discretion by Attorney General Garland?
Oh, the issue is whether we should jail Garland. That's interesting. That's a good turnaround.
You're awaiting that information that you would like to get from DOJ. You mentioned Hillary Clinton. I would like to read a couple of things.
This is a really good part here.
That you said about Hillary Clinton's emails in 2016. You said, quote, in May of that year, Hillary Clinton would be an awful president as she has shown a blatant disregard for our laws. You said former Secretary of State Clinton has put our national security at risk by showing a blatant disregard for highly sensitive classified information. In October, you said, I believe her actions as Secretary of State were not in accordance with the law. Some of your comments were said before it was even clear what was in her emails. You're not holding Donald Trump to the same standard. Why?
Oh, because I'm a partisan hack, Brianna. Imagine if a Republican ever actually answered the question in that way. It would be absolutely historic. It would be an historic moment. Well, Brianna, I'm a complete idiot partisan hack, and every one of my stated principles is only a principle for as long as it's convenient. Here it's not, so I'm actually just saying the opposite of what I've said for my entire career.
Well, there's a significant difference here. One, there was active transmission of ongoing diplomatic classified communications that were traveling through Hillary Clinton's server in her residence, which innately and inherently are going to be a risk. These are 2-year-old documents that are in the president's residence. We don't know what's in them. They're not ongoing, certainly now, of which...
If you don't know what's in them, how do you know they're not relevant to things that are ongoing? How does that make any sense?
They waited 2 years and a weekend after they got their warrant to raid his home.
Sir, do you have evidence that they are not
ongoing communications that you had Hillary?
All of a sudden, she's breaking up again, guys.
Clinton, but remember, they did not raid Hillary Clinton's home. This is why Garland has got to answer these questions. It's unequal application of the law. They did not raid her home.
How do you know?
How do you know it's unequal application of the law if you still don't actually know what's in the documents? How would you possibly know that?
9 hours in his home.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I just want to be clear. How do you know they're not ongoing? You haven't been briefed on what you want to be briefed on.
He's complaining. He has no clue what is in the documents. And he's saying these documents are completely different, and here's the reason why.
How do you know that? Why are you saying that if you don't know it?
According to the receipt, well, we do know it, and even you know it. And you and I can both agree that the inventory itself lists papers that were taken from his home in boxes. Oh. Papers are static. They're not ongoing data communications.
Are you concerned that these papers might contain the nuclear codes? Listen, papers are made from wood pulp. And when you go out into these forests, sometimes they're not raking the forest floor. And Brianna, I want to put partisanship aside. You and I can agree trees grow from seedlings. That we can agree on completely. And the thing about it is we just don't know when else has paper been used and what kinds of trees does it come from. Right. No, that wasn't the question.
Transmissions of data, which is what was going through Hillary Clinton's server. Now remember, they did not raid her home. They raided his home.
You're talking about the information, but what you were talking about is the information itself and whether it is still classified or whether it is still a national security risk.
No, I was not talking about that. I was talking about the manner of transmission and the timeliness, what it...
That wasn't at all what they were talking about. That wasn't even close to the conversation.
...represent as classified information. Now, as you know, also, what you didn't report, Donald Trump says he declassified these materials. No one questions that the president, former president, would have had as president the authority to declassify that material.
He didn't. And with some of these documents, their classification is not actually the issue. This is more subterfuge.
So it is possible that you yourself can see all this material. And I know CNN will be demanding, I'm sure, as you demanded that the warrant and the affidavit be released to you. I'm certain that if it's declassified, which is a fact-based issue that's going to have to be also resolved, you yourself will want to see these documents. How do they rise to the level?
Why does it matter what he keeps making it about? Brianna. He's like, Brianna, you're going to want to see these documents. So there. Oh, wow. Okay.
Because you have to agree, when the FBI chooses the most intrusive, the most invasive process of invading a man's home, when they have available to them other options,
I just want to be clear,
demanding the court enforce the subpoena,
these are classified documents.
That former President Trump deliver the documents to the court.
These are classified documents, some at the highest level.
The fact that they choose the most
that transmission glitch is happening again, where he can't hear what she's breaking up, guys.
Invasive has to be concerned to you also.
There are a number of steps they took before. We have a graphic to show people of the timeline of the other steps they took leading up to it. I just want to be clear. They didn't jump from nothing to going to this search and seizure.
Now, I want to mention one other thing, folks, because this is going to be a big topic in the information war that is going to kick up tomorrow. They want to have this argument both ways. Ben Shabibo was on Twitter talking about this, saying, listen, if this was so urgently a national security risk, why did they take all these steps and only now serve the search warrant? If it was that urgent, look at all these different steps. It couldn't have been that urgent because they took this much time. And of course, if the FBI and DOJ had not done all these things on the screen, the very same people would be saying, this is a president and you don't even work through his lawyers? You don't even give him the opportunity to comply? That's insanely aggressive behavior. This is a president. You have to allow the system to work. Either way, they would be complaining about steps taken or not, and the amount of time taken or not. And I'm going to tell you right now, guys, we are banning dozens of people because there are toxic losers invading the chat, and we're going to keep doing that. Okay.
Just to be clear, are you saying that where they were kept was secure?
No, I have no idea. These are questions Attorney Garland is going to have to answer. The question is not, did they jump? Were they doing other things? The question is, what did they do in between? They had other options. I'm certain that you have to understand that going into his house, especially the former President Biden's political rival, into his house for 9 hours is the most intrusive, invasive, and Attorney Garland's got to justify that. Congress has the authority of power of oversight. He needs to tell us, what is the justification? Show us these documents. We have the clearance to see them. He needs to show us the goods.
I do want to ask you, the former president's social media network put out a push alert promoting a story from a conservative outlet that identified the FBI agents involved in this search. And this comes after an armed man tried to enter an FBI office in Cincinnati with an AR-15 assault rifle. He was killed in the process of that. How is that not encouraging violence against federal law enforcement officers in this climate to identify them?
Well, obviously, I don't know who you're referring to on social media.
Didn't see the story, Brianna. Not sure what you're talking about.
Social media, but resoundly, Congress has condemned any violence against, and members of Congress have condemned, and I did, and all of the Republican members of my committee jointly, in a joint press conference, condemned any violence against any law enforcement officers, and in fact said that we greatly appreciate the service of
this guy's voice is like a more annoying Mitt Romney.
All of our FBI agents, men and women who are serving their nation.
Should the former president?
I think always, everyone should make it very clear that this is not an issue where violence is ever an answer. I think you should make it very clear.
Right. Brianna, why won't you tell your audience that violence is not the answer? You and Trump have the same responsibility to denounce the violence and to prevent the violence. Now, okay, Trump's the one who got the search warrant served, and Trump's the one who's out there fomenting talk of civil war. But Brianna, you must use your position to make sure people know not to use violence.
This is not something that should rise to the level of violence. This is an issue where, show us the goods, Attorney Garland. You have to follow the law, just as Donald Trump has to follow the law. Congress has oversight and the full ability to see these documents. Justify that you went into this man's house for 9 hours.
9. Okay, that's it. That's the interview. And so, listen, I mean, it wasn't like fireworks, but not answering any of the questions, and Breonna Keeler doing a reasonably good job of at least trying to stay on the reality that he's trying to have it both ways. We're not being told what's in these documents. And based on what's in these documents, here's a bunch of opinions. But you said you don't know what's in them. Right. No, but we've got the receipts. Oh, so then you do know what's in them. No, we're not being given any transparency, and Merrick Garland has to explain, why aren't we seeing the documents? Come on, dude. Big time loser. So that's that.